Today, we are going to be talking about how to administer monitoring. So, under this particular module, we'll be talking about Azure Monitor, we'll be talking about log analytics, workspace. I think we'll talk about alert also, how to create alert. So, majorly, we want to be able to visualize or query whatever is going on within our environment, be it on the application side, be it on the infrastructure side. At every point in time, maybe we want to configure what we call a smart alert. We talked about the fact that Jumia, when they came into operation, their first um, Black Friday, um, they had a lot of performance issue when it comes to the application performance. So with the Azure Monitor, you can see what is going on. You can see when your CPU usage of the machine or the workload hosting your application get to a certain threshold. And with that, you can decide to act, maybe by scaling up, scaling down, or adding more instances, or sending alerts to people, even if you do not want to go ahead and stay or and be monitoring what's going on there per second, but you can set up an alert to say when it gets to this certain threshold, send an alert to this certain or to this set of people, and they can act based on the kind of alert they get. And that's what we'll be discussing under this particular module. So we start by talking about how to configure, which is the first learning part within this particular module, how to configure Azure Monitor. Then we look at the Azure Alert, then we'll wrap it up with the log analytics. So let's take a look at how to configure the Azure Monitor, and let's start from there. Okay, so if you have any question at any point in time, you can always let me know, and I would be glad to respond to it. So let's start by looking at the Azure Monitor. So under this learning objective, we are going to be talking about what are some of the Azure Monitor capabilities. We'll talk about the component that makes up the Azure Monitor. We'll talk about the data that are actually ingested into the Azure Monitor, where we talk about the metrics and logs, which are the two types of data that we have. Then what are the data type based on the infrastructure, based on the resources we are monitoring. Then we'll describe the activity log, then we'll do a recap. So let's start by talking about the Azure Monitor capability. What is even this Azure Monitor? So this Microsoft Azure, what they've provided for us is actually a robust alerting and monitoring solution. So for every resource that you create within the Azure environment, you will always have what we call, a monitoring extension or capability, attached to which is attached to each resource. So what this does is it takes data from that particular resource and send it to the Azure Monitor side. So this data, it might be in form of metrics, like the fact that we talked about CPU usage. We want to know at what points a particular, let's say, application gets to maybe a particular virtual machine CPU gets to 80%, gets to 90%. These are some of the things we want to look at, and we want to make sure that all this data that is being collected, we can use it to make decisions. So that's what this Azure Monitor provide. They provide this solution for collecting and analyzing data, is either from the on-premises environment, or from the cloud environment. So it doesn't have to be just maybe our cloud infrastructures. It doesn't have to be only application that is being hosted or that are being hosted within our Azure environment. It can even be applications hosted on our on-premises environment. So this is what the Azure Monitor does. So what are some of the things we need to understand? And that's the capabilities of Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor provides different features and capabilities in three areas. The first one is the monitor and visualize metrics. We'll come back to talk about it. The query and analyze log, and the last one is setting up alert and action. So let's start by talking about the monitors and the visualize metrics. So just a typical example is a virtual machine that is hosting our application. We want to understand, or we want to get that some numerical metrics about that particular infrastructure. We want to know when that particular virtual machine CPU usage gets to this particular threshold. 80%, 90%, 95%. And when it gets to that particular number, we want to make decision on that, because we know that when it hits maybe 95%, 100%, then it has that particular virtual machine that is stretched, to its extent. So there is no way the virtual machine can scale up or add more. So the performance of the application running on that virtual machine will become slow. And that's why we want to make decision based on that. It might even be the memory. So for metrics, so this is different. For metrics are numerical values that are actually gotten from resources. So you can see numerical values available from Azure resources, which helps us to understand the performance of that particular system, the operation, the health of that system. Because when the CPU usage of a virtual machine gets to 95%, that means the performance will become slow. And that's why you guys, even using your own virtual or using your own physical laptop, when it gets to some point that you feel like, oh, why is this system slow? Because the performance has actually diminished. So most times you force it to close, or you just start closing all the applications you've opened up. So or sometimes you just restart it and say, oh, I want to force stop all the operations running on this my machine. And that's why, because you can see when you go there, you can see, oh, why is my CPU using this high? And that's what we call the metrics. So the metrics is numerical values that are gathered from resources. So then moving away from the metrics, we'll talk about the queries. So when we talk about queries, I'm not going to describe the queries or the logs based on what you have here. So when we talk about the logs, we're talking about the collection of different data, you know, collection of different data. Yes, let's put it that way, in the sense that that's what makes up a log. In the sense that, let's say we talked about the activity log, or let's say we talked about the sign-in log. When we were discussing about multi-factor authentication, I mentioned that when you're trying to sign in, you put in your username and password. And this username and password, just because, yes, we understand that you own the username and password, but we've sent you additional, code that you need to put in into, this your, signing process before you are able to log in. And some of the things that are gathered within that particular time is, where are you signing in from? Who are you? Which username and password did you put in? So with that, we know the identity that is trying to sign in. We know the account you are trying to sign in with. From what location are you trying to sign in with? From? what kind of authentication process are you using? Are you using, maybe your code from an emails, or you are using the authentication application? We want to check, where are you doing this from? Are you doing this from what kind of operating system are you using on the system you are trying to sign in from? So all this information is what makes up the log. So the collection of data, makes up what we call the log. Then we move on to another capability, which is the alert and action. So I talked about the fact that, okay, Jumia had a Black Friday, their system, was down at some point because they couldn't make decision at that particular time. Maybe by adding more instance to cater for the traffic coming into the application, or maybe by scaling up, maybe adding more hard disks, adding more, RAM to the particular system or the workload hosting that particular application at that particular time. So what we are doing is, now we want to at least, let's have one virtual machine hosting that application. However, when the CPU usage of that particular machine or the memory usage gets to this particular threshold, please send an alert to this guy, which is the head of infrastructure. But with that, the head of infrastructure feels like, okay, what if I'm away? Yes, an alert has been sent to me. That means I need to perform an action. But I can even set up an action to be performed automatically by, the Azure Monitor. And that will be auto scaling. So yes, when this log gets to, or when this CPU user gets to 80%, yes, it's fine. You can send me an alert to say CPU usage 80%. However, when it gets to 85%, please add more instance to the virtual machine. Let's have an additional virtual machine to host that particular application. So what you're doing there is you're performing an action. You're telling the Azure Monitor, oh, because of this notification I've received, perform this action to remediate whatever is happening within that particular resource. And these are the capabilities when it comes to using Azure Monitor. Let's move away from this. So what are some of the components when it comes to, Azure Monitor? So we talk about the fact that, yes, this is monitoring. What we're doing with monitoring is we are collecting and analyzing data. Some of the monitoring tools I showed you the other time, they are like alternative to Azure Monitor. So we talked about, I showed you guys, Datadog, the Prometheus, the Grafana. They work almost the same way, as so, because the Azure Monitor has a lot of tools within it, depending on what you are monitoring. So let's start talking about what are some of the components that makes up the Azure Monitor. This depends on the kind of data you want to actually monitor. So, like I've said, as you can see, the monitoring offered by this Azure is divided into different categories. We'll talk about maybe the application, the infrastructure, the Azure platform, even some custom sources. So let's say where you are hosting your application or your infrastructure is not within the Azure environment. We can still monitor, the data. You can still collect data from those resources. So you can see some of the data that we collect, we have the application monitoring data, where we talk about, okay, so this application running, what's the uptime, what's the downtime, we want to get those information. We want to get information about the operating system on a particular virtual machine, or we want to get information about a particular resource, maybe a virtual machine in this case. We want to get information about a subscription in Azure. at what point, let's say the cost on this subscription, when it gets to £90, send me an alert. When anyone is trying to deploy any resource on this particular subscription, send me an alert. If anyone is trying to delete this particular subscription, send me an alert. So we can monitor that. We can do the same for tenants. So if anyone goes in there and delete a group that we've created in tenant and say, no, it's not me, Azure Monitor has actually captured the activity. There is no way you can actually tell them it's not you because your footprint is there as far as you've logged in with your user account. So we can see when you sign in, where you sign in from, what operations you did when you logged in into that particular tenant or that particular application. And that's what you can see here. So here, these are different data source that we have. So we talk about the platform where we refer to the tenant, or we talk about the infrastructure. We are talking about maybe the resource. We're talking about the application where we talk about the application monitoring and the like. Now, so what are these? I mentioned that there are two data that we monitor. We have the metrics and we have the logs. And yeah, these are just the platform, and you can see the extensions based on what you want to monitor. If you are dealing with an application, we want to get an insight to what is going on within that application, and that's why we work with application insights. Or you want to check what is going on inside your container that is hosting your application. It might even be the VM or the network. So we talk about the network tracer, the network traffic, how to monitor the network traffic by using the network watcher. So that's what we have here. Or, okay, yes, we've collected these metrics. How do we visualize it? So for some of the people that have maybe worked with data a little, you might have seen something like, okay, the Power BI. We want to have a dashboard to say, oh, when the let's say when the CPU usage is 80%, this is it. Now we can see, I'm sure I showed you guys, majority of these guys that joined the fundamental class, you would have seen, I showed you when CPU usage of one of our virtual machine got to, I think, 90% or so. So you can see the dashboard. You can create a dashboard in Azure, also within the Azure Monitor, or you can even create what we call a workbook. This is the Grafana we talked about, which is a third-party tool. So you can also push your logs, from here to the third-party application. You want to see, what are some of the things that is happening within my infrastructure, that is happening within my application. Or you want to analyze it. If you're analyzing, depending on what you're analyzing, what data are you analyzing? Are you analyzing the metrics or you're analyzing the logs? So if you're analyzing your metrics, then you will talk about the metrics explorer. Or you want to analyze your logs, then you talk about the log analytics. So from there, we can move on to respond. Respond in the sense that, yes, when this particular threshold is met, create an alert. When somebody sign in from a country that we deem not safe, create an alert and send it to us. We've told you guys not to take this system out of UK. No, so why did you take it to this country? When someone tried to sign in from a country other than the UK, send it an alert. So, and what should now be the action to remediate that particular thing? Do not allow the person to sign in. So we want to at least send an alert and perform an action. CPU usage is 80%. Our application has started dragging. Send an alert and perform an action. What action can you perform? Or to scale? Scale out, add more instance, to the virtual machine that is currently running the application. Or you can also integrate this with different third-party tools, have different APIs. You can even export and import, your data. And maybe you want to send this to a storage account, you want to push this, to Event Hub, and whatever you feel like doing. So that's it. Now let's move away from there. Now let's talk about the metrics and the logs, which are the two data type that we monitor using the Azure Monitor. Now, this is the metrics. Like I said, these are numerical values that describe some aspect of the system at every point in time. A very typical or very good example is the memory usage or the CPU usage. So you can see, oh, this is the way this is going. At this point, it went up to 100. What happened? Do we have a lot of traffic coming in at that particular time? And when the traffic got, a little, when there was less traffic, then it came back to, normalcy. So you can see, but here you can see logs are uh like aggregation. As you can see, different kind of data organized into records. So we talked about the fact that, okay, let's say we have an activity log. So somebody deleted the resource. So it doesn't, we will not just see the resource that is deleted. No, we have information, about the resource. What time was the resource deleted? When the user signed in from, where did the user sign in from? Those things, those collections, those different data analyzed into record is what we refer to as, the log. It might be, events like deletion. It might even be traces, you know. Now, let's describe, some of the activity, or let's say the activity log event. So I told you, when you log in, this is what I just explained. Let's say somebody did something, deleted a resource. This is an activity that actually, took place within the particular portal. So we want to know at what time was this activity done. What are some of the things that we can put together, based on what happened within the particular, what application, what resource, some of those things like that. So you can get those activities um, based on what happened within the portal at that particular time. It might not even be the portal, it might be an application that is actually integrated with your organization portal. So you will still get information since you are still authenticating using the user account created within the Azure environment. And that's what you can see here. So within application, what are some of the activities? You can get those activities using the activity log or diagnostic logs. The resource you can get, so what happened within the resource will be a diagnostic log. Within the infrastructure, you deleted the resource, you created the resource, you updated the resource, it's going to be activity log. Also within infrastructure, let's say you signed in, you did some other thing, so you get what we call the activity log. And these logs, can be exported or archived to a storage account, because your activity log will only stay for 90 days in your Azure environment. This is one question that you might come across within, for people trying to, write their certification. How long will you have the activity log, stays in your Azure environment before is deleted? And that's one of the reasons why we archive to a storage account. We want to save it in a storage account, because after 90 days, you will not have access to those logs anymore. Or you want to stream it to what we call the event log, you want to query, you want to manage it within the portal, within the PowerShell, or you want to send to a work analytic workspace so that you can actually do some alerting from there and the likes, or you want to visualize it using the Power BI. Okay, so this is just an example of activity log. So we've created or updated a virtual subnet. And within this, the status is failed because we couldn't update it. At what time was this done? You can see the timestamp on what subscription, and you can add more filters to it. Who did it, who is the author, and something like that. And that's what you can see here. All right. That's about the activity log. Any question before we move ahead to the Azure alert? All right, I'll take that as a no. Okay, so let's talk about the Azure alert. Oh, I'm trying to move this. Okay, let's talk about the Azure alert. So here, like I've said, based on the data that you've collected within your Azure Monitor, you create an alert. You create what we call an action group. Action group is, who are you targeting? Who will get this information, this alert? The Azure action group typically contains of recipients, for a particular action, within your Azure Monitor or within your environment that has happened within your environment. So we'll talk about what makes up an alert rule and the likes. So let's talk about the Azure Monitor. So there are different, so like I said, yes, you guys understand that at least we have different alerts that we can have. It might be based on the metrics collected, it might be based on logs, based on some activities that happened within your tenant. Now, what makes up your alert? And this is what you can see here. The first thing is the resource. So, what resource are we targeting? To create this particular alert. So it might be a virtual machine, it might be an SQL. So we want to check, the storage account in here. Sorry, yes, the CPU usage, the memory usage of anything or any activity as regards the storage account. And when you get this data, push this data. So one thing is, once you create any resource within the Azure environment, it comes with an extension. An extension of the Azure Monitor is actually, integrated automatically with your resource. So your resource are being monitored, activities done on the resource, whatever thing is going on within the resource, is being monitored. And that's why when you check mostly related to your virtual machine, when you click on the overview page, you can even see maybe some graph, or some information about what's going on within your virtual machine on the overview page. So there are some resources like that. You can see what's actually going on. So here, the data, so like I said, the resource sends information maybe based on metrics, on logs, whatever you're doing. If this is an activity, if this is within your environment, if this is within your resource. So depending on that, you get maybe a metric or a log. Then the second thing is the condition, and that's what you have here. So evaluate the data. So the evaluation starts after the resource has been done. So this evaluation or this condition, so we'll say, oh, yes, you are getting this information. Yes, when the CPU usage is 60%, 70%, but when it gets to 80%, you need to have it evaluated. And based on that, you can have an alert rule, created, or the action created. So you have the resource, which is VM. VM CPU utilization is 80%. Then what's the condition? When the CPU usage is above 80%, the condition has been met. You need to fire an alert. So if this CPU usage is still 60%, 30%, the condition has not been met, no alert will be created. So when it's above 80%, an alert is created. and this alert is now sent to the the action group, which, like I said, contains unique set of recipients. And the action might be based on the fact that, okay, we want to just get a message, we want to get a call, or you want to even, remediate the process, maybe, by auto-scaling within your Azure Monitor or something. And for the alert details that you get, depending on the condition you set, we have different, severity for this. I think is 0 is for critical, 1 is for error, 2 is for warning, and the likes. So I think we will still take it to see all these different. So this is saying we should create an alert tool and review. So we can review an alert, but I'm not sure we can create because of the fact that the subscription. But we can come back to this and review, since we still have some things to show up there. So this is just telling you some of the alert tools that have been created, and this is based on, let's say, yes, CPU usage percentage. When this CPU usage percentage is more than 80%, it should be informational. It's not critical. We can say it's not critical. It's just send me. This is what we call smart detection. This is tilting towards critical, because when it gets to 100, the performance of your application will become slow. So we want to get those information, and we say, yes, it's just, it's just information. But if it's 100%, we might set another one and say, when it's 100%, it's critical to the business. So based on this, you can, target, you can set these to, and once the condition is met, an alert is fired to the action group based on what has been configured. So, and that's what you can see here. There are some inbuilt, alert code that will be configured for you also. So, we have the action group that I've actually explained, and this action group, they get information based on the condition of the resource that is within your organization, maybe whatever you've actually configured. However, so what type of notification do you want to get? Is it just email? Is it just the message? And for the action type, do you want to invoke an event? Do you want to run an automation, or you just want to send maybe a message to some set of people? So as you can see here, you can have up to 5 action groups, and you can see the recipient of the action. It might be a group, it might be a particular person. Right. So any question before I talk about log analytics? All right, no question. I love you guys. Now let's talk about log analytics. So for log analytics, okay, let's move this out. So we'll talk about how do we even determine the use case for this log analytics. What do we call log analytics workspace? We talked about the fact that, yes, after a while, you can have your data sent to maybe an event hub, or archived to a storage account. You can also have it, pushed to a log analytics or retained within the log analytics, because yes, we said Azure retention policy or retention date is by default is 90 days. And after that, your activity logs will disappear. But we still need this activity logged in case there's something that happens in the future and we want to refer back to it. So you can have what we call the log analytic workspace, where we can go back and query those logs you know, without just because when you push it to a storage account, the way we use it, those are stored as data. They are not stored, based on query at that particular time. So, but we always want to query it because um so we use what we call the log analytics workspace instead of pushing it to, but this will incur a lot of money as against when you are using a storage account. So why do we use a log analytic workspace, or when should we use it? And these are some of the things. How do we now query the data within this particular log analytics? And so that's what this learning objective is all about. So at what point do we even use a log analytics? What is even a log analytics? So log analytics is actually a tool within your Azure Monitor, you know, um, which is used to edit and run logs for data that has been collected, in the Azure Monitor logs. So we use what we call the log query, which helps you to search and identify, issues. So these are services that help you collect and analyze data generated by your resource. So we talked about the fact that yes, all data you can see there, they are generated by maybe the resource that you are running within your cloud environment or your on-premises environment. Now, because this is non-metrics, is not a numerical value, you don't get it as 80%. You want to check, what are some of the things that have happened within this particular application? Or let's say, why is my application why did he maybe the number of traffic coming in is more than, so what is going on with this application? You want to get a log, some of the events that is happening within the application. You want to get a log, so you can do what we call a log query. You can query, can write some queries to say, yes, please, I want to get this information about this particular activity happening within my Azure resource. And that's what you can see. So example is accessing system updates, troubleshooting operational information. Why is my application down? So you want to get some information about it. Okay, we'll come back to this. Now, let's talk about the workspace. I talked about the fact that um you want to still store your information. So your workspace is a container where data is collected, analyzed, and presented. So you can create what we call a workspace if you still want to analyze your data. But like I said, when you store your logs inside your workspace for more than 21 days, you will start incurring debt. So the best, what we do is after the 31 day, we just start pushing those logs to a storage account, just for archiving purposes. Should in case we need it, then we can decide to push it back and analyze whatever we need to analyze and push it back to the storage account. So that's what the Azure Log Analytics workspace, just the same way we create um different different resource also. That's the same way we create our workspace. So we create our workspace by filling up the basic tab, the subscription, the resource group, the name, the region, and the likes. So this is how do we query, and some of how do we even, what are some of the things that we can query within our log analytics workspace. So log analytics workspace support what we call custom query. So you might not really worry yourself about that. But that's the same way we this is just like we want to review something within our PowerShell. We want to see how many virtual machines are running within within our resource or within our tenant. So you can do the query. You can see, what are some of the request duration over the last 12 hours within each of our application, or we want to check our particular resource, what's the response time of our virtual machine. So you want to do a query. So you want to write like a log to say you will see how those logs look like. You want to write some information and say, okay, for this particular event, get me this kind of information. And how do we even query? And that's what. So when we say we query, we want to retrieve information that has been collected by Azure Monitor from our Azure resources or other resources, maybe be it the on-premise resources, or it might be a resource which is a third-party resource or the likes. So it's not compulsory you have to be an Azure resource. Yeah. So this is the structure that the query takes. So this query is a query for an event going on within um, a particular machine. Now, the query is we want to get the event. What event do you want to get? Anytime there is an error, you know, let's say in the last 24 hours, maybe we've got some warnings or some critical issues, but this one, we want to get the information only about errors. We want to know when there was error within our application. And that's what you can see here, where event level, it might even be maybe severity level. As you can see here, it might be critical, it might be warning. So that's how we write in the query. So events so you are saying these are conditions that need to be put in place or that need to be taken into consideration while exporting or retrieving the logs. So time generated, which is above 1 day, not today. We want something that has been done, maybe 1 day ago and above. And we'll summarize based on the counts that comes into the computer, but we only want the top 10. So this is how it looks like, and this is just you giving information to the workspace to say this is the kind of data I want to retrieve. Retrieve it based on these conditions that are vitally given to you. Okay, done. Yeah, we can have. All right. So that's the end of. Let me see if I can show you guys one or two things within Azure Monitor side. Okay, so we talked about. Let's even see how the Azure Monitor looks like. Uh, Azure Monitor pipeline. No, I don't want the pipeline. Monitor. Okay, so yeah, you can see. So you can see on the Azure Monitor side, you can see the insights. If you are configuring, maybe we want to monitor applications, you can see monitor app availability. You want to monitor the uptime, downtime of an application running. It might be running within your virtual machine, running within your app service, but you want to monitor it. So what are the performance? What are some of the errors, the usage of that application? How many people are even logging in into that application? How many people are accessing that application? So you want to use the application inside, or this is based on the performance of your container. If you are running a container within the container instance, within the Kubernetes service, you want to monitor, or just the virtual machine yourself. What's the performance of you know, and your network? Yeah, you want to set up or create maybe a dashboard based on the metrics. So you have the metrics, you have the alerts, the log, the workbooks, analytics, diagnosis service, or you want to leverage on third-party application to monitor your application. So here you get the alerts, you get metrics, so you can see the alerts, you can create your alert from here. Do you want to create an alert group? You want to create an alert rule itself? what are some of the metrics, that are being collected by different applications. So you can see how the metrics looks like. So virtually it's going to give you this visual, uh, okay, let's see, this is going to give you this visual representation of whatever is going on within your application. And so it's going to visualize it based on some of the metrics you've selected. So this is, so you can see something like the line is going to tell you, okay, when this guy gets to 100 byte per seconds, something like that. So this is telling you, okay, metrics are numerical values. And for the logs itself, we talked about the logs. How do we even query the logs? What's the log? So, like I said, these are aggregation of data collected. So you can see some of the, so let's see logs. Let me see what has one particular log. Let's say last 7 days. We can start writing logs here, or I can go pick, let's say something. I'm not sure I have. So let's query. So I don't have anything to query. But this is where you put in your I'm looking at. Okay, so we can have something like this. App request. I mean, what are the traffic coming in 12 days ago? Summarize this request. We can have something like this. Let's see. Do I have any? I think I can look for virtual machine or something. I don't have anything related to app. I'm not sure I've created any app running. Okay, this is just going to. Okay, so let's see virtual machine. So these are some of the insights, but I should get something related to virtual machine. So virtual machine performance, because I have, so you can see the performance of my virtual machine. Have I done anything related to? So, you can see CPU utilization, available memory, what's the byte per second rate received by the virtual machine, what's the byte sent rate of that particular machine, this speaks use of virtual machine. You can have that. You can, if you have any application running, if you have a storage account, so whatever you want to monitor, so you can see, you can get insight based on each of these resource running within your environment. Or you want to go to the resource itself, like let's say we have a virtual machine, and within the virtual machine you can look for the metrics within the virtual machine. If I scroll down, I would see insight on that virtual machine. Let's see, do we even have anything going on here? So we can see insights, the metrics, what are some of the logs related to this virtual machine. Yeah, so you can get logs, you can get some insights on the virtual machine. If you have any application running within your virtual machine, you can get, let's see, do we have any query related to this machine? Then, okay, so access query activity. Let's see, do we have any activity related to this machine? I'm going to change this to last 7 days. I hope I do have anyone. Do we have anything? Do we? Yeah. Last 7 days. So activities on the virtual machine, nothing was found within 7 days. So let's say I should have access, signing location. sign in location, summarize field table, sign in logs. Okay, you want me to write? Let's see, log into the resource itself. Field sign in, log into the resource. What's happening with the summarize operator field to resource table, naming signing logs? Why? Let's see. Which one can I look for? Injection, I have injection, MFA, system logs, summary logs. Let's see. Not sure. Okay, this guy get problem. Entry, compare period, test, authorized connection. I should have noticed. Don't know why it's failing though. So no query. So, but this is how, for, like I said, for every resource within your particular within your environment, you can have data collected, logs, metrics collected related to that particular resource. If you do not want to have that, you can have that information collected within your Azure Monitor. If you want to look that within your Azure Monitor, let's see, maybe we can have CPU usage. This my machine has. The last time I used the machine, it's been a while now. So, but I can get. Let's see if I can get CPU consumed, available memory. Okay. And have something like last 3 days, last 30 days, something like that. No, virtual machine host, yes. Do I have any printing system you can see? Let's see. Yeah, so you can have something like this. So you will see what, you will be able to visualize whatever is going on within that virtual machine. It might be based on the disk, it might be based on the operating system, and based on that, you can set up an alert to say, once this is 80%, please do this, create a custom alert, or if you want to, just based on whatever is happening within your resource. So you can set this within each particular resource, or you want to do it from the Azure Monitor itself, where at least you can perform this on multiple resources at once, all from here, or you just want to do it based on each of these resources. So that brings us to the end of this class, and brings us to the end of our Azure Administrator, bootcamp.